Well, good morning or good afternoon, everybody, depending, I guess, on where you are in relationship to the Mississippi River today. Thank you for joining us for the latest edition of On Track Live. We've got a great program set up today. We're going to talk about our upcoming Rail Shipper 101 program. We're going to mix things up just a little bit today. Usually we start with some newsy updates and then get into the conversation. We're going to flip that around today. We're going to get right to the discussion about the Rail Shipper 101 course that we're putting together. And then when we wrap up that conversation, we'll come back and I've got some information to convey. You may or may not have seen the Environmental Protection Agency's greatest day of deregulation ever announcements last week, in which they announced 31 different deregulatory activities that they're undertaking. So that's pretty big news, but we didn't want to keep Martin hanging around to listen to all that nasty EPA stuff. So we're gonna dive right in with our special guest today, and stick around for the end of the conversation. We'll be able to provide some information and perhaps do a little discussion about what's happening on the deregulatory front and how that may affect coal generation and coal markets. Without further ado, though, to get started, many of you already know Martin Liu, but Martin is the CEO and founder of Comtrex, which is the largest electronic marketplace for rail shippers to directly connect with rail car owners, transloaders, storage facilities, rail services, and industry data. Martin's been a frequent speaker with us here at NCTA, and a little earlier this year, Martin and I got together and said, "Hey, our industry has a problem here, or an opportunity, I guess, depending on how you want to spin it, with the succession planning that's going on. It's kind of not a week goes by now that I don't hear from somebody who's in the area that's that's retiring or moving on to other assignments, and there's a real need to identify who the next generation of logistics professionals are going to be, and to help them get their feet on the ground." So that's where the idea for a day-long instructional course we're calling Rail Shipper 101, to help people master the essentials that they need to do their jobs. And Martin was kind enough to throw his hat in. So this is a joint gig between NCTA and Comtrex. We'll be putting this on Monday, May 19th, which is the day before the NCTA spring and O&M conferences get started. An all-day course. We'll give you a little more background on that here shortly. And then, of course, at the end of the day, we'll be able to have a social reception with all the attendees of the Rail Shipper 101 course, and all the folks who are coming into town for the NCTA spring and O&M meetings. I'll follow up with a little more logistics at the end of our discussion today, but I wanted to get right to it. Martin, we're kind of focused on this end on some of the heavy commodities: coal, cement, lime, fly ash, some of those bulk commodities hanging around the power generation business. Workforce succession planning is a big deal in the spaces that we see, but are you seeing that need across the whole rail shipper industry?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me and allowing me to be able to be on for the first half and get in the way of all the environmental news that's happening, all the deregulation that's happening. So hopefully this will be a valuable 30 minutes. But yeah, absolutely. So the concept of sort of succession planning and this generation transformation is taking place is really the genesis of why I started Comtrex back in 2017. I think most of you know that I was a coal trader for JP Morgan for about 7 years. But the reason why I left the industry to start this is because of what I saw coming down the pike. By 2025, and you've probably heard me say this 10 times, but by the time you got to 2025 this year, 75% of the global workforce would be millennials. And one of the most enlightening things that I learned when I was trying to figure out whether I wanted to start Comtrex or not is I had a focus group with 6 different shippers, different industries, and I asked them across the board, what are they doing about succession planning, and how much longer are they going to be, running the groups, and this was in 2017, and then, Average answer was about 5 to 7 years. And then the 100% across the board said there was no succession plan. So that was, to me, therein lies the opportunity. And since then, I haven't seen, whether it be a large company or a smaller company, whether it be a co-op or a municipality, I haven't seen any real formal structured training programs in place. So that's when Comtrix back in 2020 launched Resources Center with Rail 101s and, started creating an Ask the Experts. So when you brought up this idea, I thought that was timing wise, it couldn't be better because it's always lingered in the back of people's heads. But I think now more than ever, it's more pronounced. And yeah, I'm not only seeing it across, the mining, coal, fossil fuels industry. This is, every sort of dry bulk, liquid bulk commodity. And then we also do intermodal as well. And, every side of logistics, 3PL, freight brokerage, supply side, everyone's going through the same thing. Nobody is immune to what we're seeing now that we have the infusion of AI into this sort of paradigm shift. The accelerants are going to be even greater as to how different things will be within the next 12 to 24 months.
And for our Rail Shipper 101 program coming up on May 19th, we're not limiting this to NCTA members. I mean, right? Martin, you're reaching out to all those other commodity groups. This is a commodity agnostic program, correct?
That's right. So we have 2,200 shipping companies that use Comtrix. Initially it was very heavy dry bulk, and then I'd say we started getting a lot more liquid bulk shippers. And then when we launched Transloading in 2020, we have about 35% of the traffic that comes through our system or for containers or for intermodal movements. So yeah, it's going to be this isn't specific to one type of commodity, but it is very carload heavy versus intermodal heavy. So but the concepts and the principles we'll be discussing, I think will be pretty ubiquitous and will be helpful no matter what part of the commodity spectrum you're in.
Yeah. How did you, just, full disclosure, Martin did all the heavy lifting on helping come up with this curriculum because he's smarter about that end of the business than I am. How did you go about formulating the curriculum? We've got it out there on the website. How did you go about formulating that curriculum for this course?
Yeah, actually very similar to how I came about, the idea for Comtrix. To me, it was a very simple but powerful approach. All we did is we started asking shippers, short lines, class ones, transloaders, service providers across the different spectrum of the industry. One simple question. What do you wish you had learned sooner? Number one, and number two, if you pass on information or wisdom to the next generation of railroaders, what would that information be? So the level of passion and engagement in the answers that were given by each of these different sectors was quite astounding. And I think people who have been in this industry for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, there's a real great care and passion to make sure that the industry sort of thrives and continues on, even in the new environment that we're entering with artificial intelligence. So it was very, very clear to me that having an organization like NCTA foster and support the concept and bring the members together to participate in this was going to be critical. And I think this isn't going to be the first. If all goes well, this will be the very beginning to what we believe is a series of these 101s that will be able to ongoing sort of online ongoing education for all the constituents of the organization.
That's great. It was I agree. It's now is the time to get this kind of thing going. And by the way, just for the audience, if you have any questions, I do have the chat box open here. Feel free to type in questions in the chat, or we'll have a little room for direct Q&A at the end here if you want to chat that way. But any questions, go ahead. Feel free to put them into the chat box while we go through the discussion here. Martin, can you briefly review kind of the topics that will be covered in this day-long seminar and kind of how the structure is set up?
Yeah, and I'll start at a high level just to think about what the mental model was for how we would teach this. Getting folks in a room for one day to teach them all these different aspects of rail it's a pretty big undertaking. But, if you think about this in a very practical manner, what we thought was, let's create very digestible lessons that can provide immediate value. Let's focus on, very foundational principles that sort of cut across, all different aspects of rail, while also applying real world applications for what technology is going to do. But really, at the end of the day, the goal was not really to just teach rail basics, but really to empower the attendees with actionable knowledge they can use to reduce costs, optimize operations, and make better decisions. At the end of the day, you can teach, all these different topics, but, just practically speaking, if there is one sort of major takeaway from each of the different lessons that can help the folks who attend do their job a little bit better, or help them help their team do their job a little bit better, even if it's an incremental 5 or 10% better in a different area. That's we just want to make it worth everyone's time. And this is it's called 101 for a reason, but at the same time, this isn't just for newbies and people who have never been around rail, because technology and AI, and there will be other aspects that we'll talk about, sort of current trends. This is also great for people who have been in the industry, for decades and been doing this for a long time. Nothing in any industry, as far as sort of lessons or principles, ever stays static. Everything is dynamic. And right now we are entering what I believe is going to be the most transformative time in technology wise that humanity has ever seen. And that's not hyperbole. It's absolute truth. And the rail industry and logistics and supply chain industry will be either a very big beneficiary of it in a very utopian view, or in a dystopian view. There will be a lot of scarcity, and there'll be a lot of confusion and a lot of disorganization. So, I think it behooves us all to be able to try to make sure and stay on the right side of what, destiny is going to be here in the next 24 months.
Yeah, so good time to both brush up on basics and prepare for a future that's coming screaming in pretty fast. I want to come back to that in just a minute. Before we get into that part though, can you give the group a little bit of information on some of the instructors we've got on board? This won't just be, Wardo and Martin flapping their gums up here. We've got some experts lined up to come in and actually teach the course.
That's right. So I'll just expand on the question just a bit more, and then I'll jump into who we're bringing in. But see, we're going to cover railroad basics and industry structure. So understanding what the different roles for Class 1 short lines, regional railroads, transloaders. We'll be discussing rates and tariffs, how pricing works, and strategies for negotiating, rail car management, equipment selection, fleet optimization, tracking and tracing, operational best practices, including transloading, terminal management, network optimization and planning, regulatory and compliance. What do you need to know to stay ahead of, or stay on the right side of the FRA and STB rules, freight movement and management strategies, and integrating rail into a broad overall supply chain strategy, and how does that combine with folks that are trucking or barging or using ocean freight for import export, and then emerging technologies. But each one of those different aspects, when we were thinking about what are the building blocks to rail, each one of those aspects, to me, in my eyes, were kind of the building blocks that, if we can just make sure that everyone has a baseline understanding of that, and then we can start to sort of get ahead of where we're going in each of those different subtopics. But when thinking about the instructors and who would be teaching the curriculum, I've always thought that the people that are out there doing things are always, really the sort of optimal people to have teaching. So we have Dick Kloster. Dick Kloster has been in the industry for over 30 years. He ran, I think he managed this over 70,000 car fleet at GE. He was the chief commercial officer at Alltranstech for several years. He's Progressive Railroading sort of lead rail equipment leasing sort of industry authority. So he puts out an article on Progressive Railroading on trends every year. And he sits on the board of multiple shipper associations. So, very, very practical experience. He started his career in short lines and then sort of moved to different parts of the industry, but one of the few people that have been on different sides of the industry. And then we also have Tamiko Bryant, who's the general manager of the New Orleans Public Belt. And the reason why New Orleans Public Belt was very, what I thought would be a very unique sort of perspective is they're one of they're one of the few locations that connects with all six Class 1 railroads, number one. Number two, they're in New Orleans, so they're in a very critical part of the supply chain, right in the middle of America, which is not just moving rail or truck, but it also touches maritime, marine, sort of, blue water, brown water. So she's going to be talking about sort of what she's seen and what she's been able to do with different aspects of sort of rail car storage and other aspects of moving. And she has Class 1 railroad experience as well. And then we have a few other folks that we're talking to right now which are real world practitioners. And I'm coming into talk about technology, and I've been building technology for the past 8 years, and now I'm in the process of building out artificial intelligence agents to build into Comtrex. So, the folks in the room that I choose to attend are going to be asking questions of instructors that are, actually doing things in the real world today and are, making decisions, interacting with real, complex problems that, we have over 2,200 shipping companies. We have over 2,000 translators, over 450 short lines on Comtrex. So I kind of have a unique perch as to what I see the tapping industry. So yeah, we're trying to make this as valuable as possible and, make this dynamic. But when you're asking questions to instructors, you don't want theoretical answers. You want actual practical answers that are coming from experience. And that was, when John and I put this together, that was something we both agreed upon is, we want, effectively practitioners teaching other practitioners about the different aspects and dynamics of rail.
Yeah, very, very excited, and thank you for all the work you've been doing on recruiting, this level of experts to give the curriculum. I think it's going to be an outstanding program. Without throwing out too many spoiler alerts, I mean, Martin, you're going to be on the faculty for presenting the portion on technology and in particular AI and how AI is rapidly looming as something that may shake up the logistics industry here. Can you give us you spoke at one of our recent conferences and I came away scared, but could you give us maybe just a little sneak preview of that AI portion of the curriculum? Because again, this is this curriculum, I think, is not just for new people who need to master the basics, but it's, some old dogs like me can probably learn some new tricks as well as to how things are changing and changing pretty fast, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'll start off at a very high level. I've been recently sort of been brought into different companies to speak to the executives and management about AI and how to utilize AI and increase productivity and efficiency in organizations. And one data point that I always like to start off with is some of the smartest futurists or technologists in the world believe that we have about 700 days until society as we know it is going to be completely different than we've ever seen before. And just starting out at a very macro level, just, getting to appreciate the fact that what we do on a day-to-day basis and what, historically our parents and grandparents and how they've been able to interact with humans and how they've interacted with technology, all of that is going to be flipped on its head and changed in a matter of 700 to 800 days. I think even faster than that, AI will be integrated into every aspect of our life, and we may not know it already. One very simple data point is, I don't know if you've noticed, but I get emails from people now that have perfect syntax, no typos, no errors, emojis that I would have never even thought they'd use. But it's very obvious that their level of writing had improved significantly.
I've noticed fewer typos in your emails, Martin. Are you using it?
You got to keep it authentic a little bit, right? But that's a real world application that, I think folks that on the phone could probably say is great. Yeah, absolutely. We've noticed little subtleties like that, but at the end of the day, I thought it would be very important, in a small amount of time that we'll have together, is to talk about what AI is doing sort of at a general level, because this isn't just about us in our professional capacity, but this is about us in our personal lives, being able to be more productive and stay ahead of the trends and stay ahead of technology, but also on a more practical level for what we do in a day-to-day as logisticians. And right now, the concept was, you know, where's the low-hanging fruit where we're going to see AI probably make the biggest impact initially. And if you think about it, in order for AI to operate, in order for AI to even function, you need data, and the data trains the models, these large language models, on exactly sort of how it should be functioning, whether it's just spitting back answers or whether it's acting agentically or autonomously to be able to execute different sort of actions. But so some things we're thinking, we're thinking of discussing is, how is it going to be integrated into, your visibility component of what you do? How is it going to be, how it's going to improve railcar tracking and tracing? How it's going to help predict potential delays before they happen? We're building in AI agents into our system to help shippers identify the best transloading, eventually best routing options in seconds instead of hours. We're going to help take all this information, and not just Comtrix, but other companies that are sitting on a gold mine of data. They're gonna leverage that data at some point to be able to optimize rates, not just actual freight rates, but think about all the different sort of inputs that go into the delivered cost model. Think about right now, a lot of those decisions being made are being made anecdotally or by gut instinct, or because this is how things have always been done. If you're thinking about creating a mental model or a framework where there's going to have to be new people coming into these seats that are going to be having to make those decisions, you're going to have to figure out how to templatize and create a framework that's going to be able to be, transcendent and be able to be, passed on. I had a conversation with someone last week who manages a fleet of 4,000 rail cars, tank cars. And he was calling me and asking me basic questions about how to negotiate a lease. And I asked him how long he's been managing the fleet. He said he just got into the seat 4 months ago. And I said, how long has he been exposed to rail? And he said 4 months ago.
Yeah.
And he's managing a fleet of 4,000 tank cars.
He needs to
Now
be invited to this Rail Shipper 101 seminar that I've heard about. So
that's exactly, yeah. So yeah, obviously he's a perfect candidate for that. And when you're talking about moving products, particularly talking about moving hazmat liquids, there's a lot of potential negative detriment and impact if you don't understand how to manage those cars properly, not just economically, but just overall, and being able to understand how that fleet should operate and how they should be managing those leases and renewals and the repair maintenance of those leases. But anyhow, that the fleet utilization, I think, is going to be a big improvement area where we can help sort of reduce dwell times through AI. I think one of the biggest misconceptions that is that AI is going to replace people. I think I mentioned this at the last time we spoke to NCTA. In reality, I think it's going to make people smarter and more effective than ever before. This is the first time in history that everybody that has a cell phone, or which is everybody pretty much, is now going to have a way to be able to increase their IQ level by 45 points by opening up ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, Grok, whatever LLM you use. That's an increase of 45 IQ points. Right now, AI is as smart, and they call it between 110 and 155 or 160 IQ level. Elon Musk is at a 155 IQ level. They predict, or they suspect Albert Einstein was at a 160 IQ level. And today, if AI just stopped today and didn't get progressively better, it would already be functioning in certain activities and practice in areas as good or better than Elon Musk or other folks of that IQ level, which is scary to think because, really what I call the Netscape moment, which is the time that, Netscape was the first browser that really sort of exposed people to the internet back in the early 90s. ChatGPT was the Netscape moment, or you can call it even the iPhone moment, when you realize, artificial intelligence has been around since 2000. Machine learning has been around since 2010. So when you think about what we're seeing as far as how ubiquitous it's becoming so fast, ChatGPT really was released in 2023, and now, I think you have over 150 million users. So at the rate of technology and the rate of change that technology is taking place, I think it behooves, all of us, not just, professionally, but personally. And then for, those who want to help prepare the next generation, whether that be the next generation of folks that are in your organization or the next generation being your kids or your grandkids, I think learning about AI in any aspect or in any context will be significantly important. There are people who believe that our grandchildren will be the last generation of humans to learn how to write. So if you believe that,
Well,
which there are people who believe that,
we're
then
already not teaching cursive in the schools, right? So we
that's
we
exactly right.
we mentioned old dogs, and I'm confessing to be one. So that's but yeah, the pace of it going. And I guess if I hear you correctly, what you're saying is it's not going to take your job, but it's going to change your job. You need, what we need to do. The new tricks we old dogs need to learn is how to use these tools that are presenting themselves.
Yeah, nobody on this call or anyone in our industry will be replaced by AI, but people will be replaced by people who know AI better than the other people. So if you think about it in that context, what we're discussing, even if you can take one or two tidbits away, think about it as just foundational. My son is just finished his first basketball season. He's 7 years old, and he just wants to shoot 3-pointers all day long. And I said, you just got to sit and dribble the ball. Just focus on the fundamentals and basics. And then you can build upon dribbling. I think right now the metaphor to that, or the analogy to that, is you just use AI a little bit in your everyday life. Just use it for some component or aspect of what you do. And that's what the goal of the course is what are some very practical sort of tidbits or some digestible lessons that you can take away, so that when you leave San Antonio, you go back to your office, your workspace, and you can teach your team a few new things and new tricks. I guarantee you that if there are those few things you take away, you're talking about an increase at minimum of 10 to 20% in effectiveness or productivity or efficiency gains, and time will be saved dramatically. So for the cost of what were the charges for registration, I think you'll easily make 10x return on that just by taking away one or two tidbits. Not necessarily just by what we're learning here on the AI side, but what Tamika or Dick or anyone else that we'll be having will teach. But I don't see it being and there's if you've been doing rail for 20 years, 20 plus years, there's a huge amount of information to take away. And if you've never done rail before, there's a huge amount of information to take away. So I think the way John and I did, sort of design this course was really to be a full spectrum of lessons for either end of the newer sort of folks coming to the industry or folks that have been doing this that want to stay ahead of the trends. I think we're trying to cover bases for both ends of that.
And thank you again, Martin, for all the help in putting this together. This was this was beyond NCTA alone's capabilities, and so Comtrex brings a lot to the table here. We appreciate the partnership in moving this forward. If anybody has questions for Martin, now would be a time to put them in the chat box or unmute yourself, wave your handy thingy, because he'll probably be leaving us in a minute here when we transition into our discussion about regulations and so forth. And Steve, we'll get to your question on the STB when we get into the regulatory stuff here. Just a note about logistics for the short course. Again, the short course will be all day on Monday, May 19th. The conference venue has changed. We were originally at the Intercontinental in San Antonio, and the space we've moved hotels to get a space that is more functional for us and gives us a little more room to accommodate this group that we're getting together, particularly since the 101 course is going to be attracting folks from not just our heavy haul private rail car commodity shippers that normally come to our meetings. So we have moved over to the Plaza. It's a very beautiful hotel. It's actually on the funner end of the Riverwalk, so that's a little added benefit there. It's a Marriott Autograph Collection hotel, very nice property. Those of you who registered early and made a registration at the Intercontinental, all of those room reservations have been transferred over to the Plaza, and you will be getting a notification from the new hotel that your hotel reservations have been transferred. And of course, as always, Melinda will be able to help troubleshoot anything there. But if you did already register and already make a reservation at the Intercontinental, don't worry, those reservations will transfer over or already have transferred over. Remember, the course will be all day on Monday. We'll wrap up with a reception Monday night, social reception, which is a chance to network with all the other folks who are coming in for the spring and O&M conferences. The spring and O&M conferences will run concurrently from the 20th to the 22nd, adjourning around midday on the 22nd, Thursday, so everybody can get on the road and get home. The registration for these is separate. So if you register for the short course, you will need to register separately for either the spring or the O&M course that will be continuing. And for those of you who are interested in the AI discussion that we just had, AI will be a part of the short course on Monday, kind of a perspective thing, but then we're also going to do a little deeper dive on the AI stuff on Wednesday as well. So we encourage everybody. The links to register are on the NCTA website. There will be coming out in the OnTrack newsletter again tomorrow, more links. You'll also be getting emails, but there's not, we're in more favorable space now with this new hotel, but there's not unlimited space. So if you or colleagues are interested in, particularly for attending the 101 program, we urge you to register early because we're not guaranteeing that we're not going to run out of space for that program. So, please register early, and remember, conference registration is separate from the 101 course registration. I think that kind of covers the logistics. Martin, you have any final thoughts before we start talking scary regulatory stuff?
Yeah. Just a question. For the folks that are going to attendance, will the courses or the 101s, will it be recorded? Will it be on video?
Yeah,
or is
we will not
you have to be there to see it?
Yeah, you have to be there to see it. We will be recording the sessions while they're going on. One of the things that we're, as Martin knows, but just for the group's edification, one of the things we're toying with is maybe trying to come up with an on-demand product for this course curriculum. But no, we will not have a virtual attendance option like we did back in the old COVID days. So you want to participate, please come on out and join us in San Antonio.
Yeah, and I guess just one other comment I'd make, it would be everyone who's in the call or anyone else who remembers the NCTA, if they have any suggestions as to who they think would be great to participate as a speaker or any topics that we should cover, to let us know. But I think one of the more powerful components of this is the social dynamic of having fellow peers in the room that will all be learning at the same time, and then it definitely doesn't help or doesn't hurt to we'll be having cocktails afterwards to be able to continue to discuss the ideas we go through. But sometimes it's very beneficial to be able to go back to your respective organizations and talk to management about your peers and cohorts that are doing similar things and understand what they're doing or what they're not doing. If it's for competitive reasons or just to be able to sort of stay ahead of the curve. I think that social dynamic is almost as valuable as the lessons that the instructors will be teaching.
Yeah, I agree, and it's one of the reasons that we've made the strategic shift to run the spring and O&M conferences. The spring conferences being more focused on business and policy matters, and the operations and maintenance conference obviously on equipment management. Running the last couple of years, we've run those two conferences concurrently, and the benefits of being able to have that crossover interaction, the business networking that goes on there has been a real benefit. So we're looking forward to enjoying that in San Antonio this year again too. So
great.
Well, thank you, Martin. You're welcome to stick around and listen to regulation stuff, but I know you're also at a conference yourself now, and so if you need to bow out, appreciate all you're doing to help us with this. So.
All right. Thank you very much, Sean. Appreciate it, Melinda.
Awesome.
Thank you all, and look forward to seeing you all in a few months.
Awesome. Thanks, Martin.
Yeah. See ya. Bye.
Thanks. So, promise an update. There is a lot going on. We are now on day 59 of Trump 2.0. And the last couple of weeks have been particularly eventful. When immediately after taking office, President Trump rushed out an unprecedented amount of executive orders that kind of set what executive orders do is set the stage for these are the policies that we're going to pursue and so forth. We're now getting to the phase where the individual agencies are starting to weigh in on their plans for actual activities that would implement the policy goals that were established by those executive orders. And the last couple of weeks have been particularly momentous in that regard. I'll start quickly over at the Surface Transportation Board to answer the question that Steve put in the chat box a little earlier. There was a decision came out of the Surface Transportation Board earlier this week or late last week, where the STB has decided to drop litigation over their final offer rate review rule that was promulgated last year. This was an alternate system that STB had put up for adjudicating rate disputes. It was intended as something that would provide a faster and more streamlined approach to resolving rate disputes without having to set up major rate cases that can take years and run into millions of dollars of expenses. When that rule came out last year, it was challenged by AAR and some railroads. It went to court. STB had a couple of setbacks in the court, and the decision that was made last week was just to drop future activity on the litigation. So final offer rate review essentially is no more. This NCTA was never heavily involved in this issue. It really didn't apply to unit train shippers. Most unit train shippers are under contracts with the railroads for their pricing and service terms. So it was outside of that. This was mainly for manifest shippers. So we never really put our oar in the water much on this issue. The interesting thing, if you want to talk the politics side of it, is the Surface Transportation Board. The chair of the board is typically the same political party as the president. So last year, the board had Marty Oberman, a Democrat, as the chair when this process started. Robert Primus, who's a Democrat, as the chair toward the end of the year after Marty retired. And so that's where it came from. When the final offer rate review rule was passed, the two Republican members of the STB, Michelle Schultz and Patrick Fuchs, offered dissents on the rule. So now that the political control of the STB has changed, Patrick Fuchs is now the chair, a Republican. This is a guy who didn't vote for the rule when it went into effect last year. And so politically, I think it's easier for him to say, well, we're not going to try to continue to litigate this, especially since it's going to be an uphill push based on some earlier court decisions. So it's not entirely unexpected, I don't think. The current status of the STB is, Marty Oberman retired. His seat has not been filled. So now you've got Patrick Fuchs as the Republican chair. You've got two Republicans, two Democrats. And no word on when that fifth seat may get filled. In his first weeks here, Patrick has been working hard. They've issued a number of decisions on some smaller, let's call them more transactional issues that have been hanging around for years. So he's making a real effort to clean up the docket. Whether any big rules get done in the next little while is up for speculation. And we will have there's a chance for an ad. Come to San Antonio. We'll have some STB experts to opine on where they think the board may be going. One other thing to stick in the back of your head, though, one of the Trump executive orders that was interesting is the White House is now making a move to bring independent agencies like the STB or others in our area, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, these independent boards. Trump is moving to bring them under the same rulemaking framework that agencies do and require major decisions to be reviewed by the White House before they're promulgated. It'll be interesting to see if anybody challenges. So give me an example. If EPA does a rule now, they're going to do a regulation. Before they publish that regulation, put it out for public comment, it goes through an office called the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs, OIRA, which is housed in the Office of Management and Budget, which is an extension of the White House. And so rules that come out of these agencies have to go through that process so that the White House can, number one, check it with other agencies to make sure that it's consistent with what agencies across the government are doing. But number two, make sure it fits with the White House's policy objectives. In the past, STB and FERC have not been subject to that process, but Trump is now trying to make them subject to that process. And that'll be another very interesting to see if anybody challenges that assertion, and it would be another step that would have an impact on whatever the STB decides to do over the next 4 years. So that's probably more than Steve was looking for. But I think that the net takeaway was that rule was not that important to our little sector of the world, but may foretell where things may be going on other issues over at STB. So with that at STB, I did want to take just a minute to familiarize everyone with what came out of EPA last week. Again, EPA, it was, I think it was Wednesday. I was sitting here and all of a sudden the email started going bing, 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 and received 32 individual press releases from the EPA headquarters. One press release announcing this day of deregulation where they were starting all these deregulatory activities, and then another press release for each of the 31 things they did. Now, not all of the 31 things apply to us. I mean, they were all over all kinds of EPA regulations, fuel standards for cars, electric vehicle mandates, all those kind of things. But there were a number of rules included that will have an impact on the coal fleet and on the on coal-fueled electricity generation. In tomorrow's On Track, we'll publish an article that has links to each of these press releases. I'll mention briefly now, so you'll be able to go deeper and look at them. One thing I would clarify is that what EPA did last week was it announced what it intends to do. So that none of these deregulatory actions were formally started with the announcements that came last week. This is more of a roadmap. And many of these actions that EPA says it's now going to undertake are going to require formal rulemaking, publishing a rule, taking public comment, publishing a proposed final rule. And many of these processes take months, would be fast. Years is more capable, is more probable. So basically, this is a roadmap for where EPA is heading now. And not all of them had a lot of specifics as to exactly how they're going to approach these. You can click on a couple of the things in the On Track tomorrow and read the press releases and get a feel for it. But I guess what I'm saying is don't expect things to turn on a dime because of this announcement. That said, EPA has said that they are going to reconsider the Clean Power Plan 2.0 regulation. That's the carbon regulation for power plants. They're going to reconsider the mercury and air toxic standards rule. They plan to restructure the regional haze program. They plan to reconsider the greenhouse gas reporting program. They're going to revise the Waters of the United States rule. They're going to look at revising steam effluent limitation guidelines that were put on coal field power plants that discharge waters. That's kind of the Clean Water Act part of the coal ash rules. I think you can expect them to roll back some standards that were rolled forward last year by the Biden administration. They're also going to look at the legacy coal ash rule, probably revise the legacy coal ash rule that came out last year, and also specifically called out in that press release that they're going to look at more flexible compliance deadlines as part of that. They're going to try to the other thing that they called out specifically for the coal ash rule is that they are going to re-energize the approval of state permit programs and try to push more authority on these types of environmental regulations back to the states rather than the federal government. They pledged to start along the lines of pushing more authority to the states. They're proposing to clear up the backlog of Clean Air Act state implementation programs and collaborate more directly with the states on the Good Neighbor Rule, which is the old air interstate transport rule that governs emissions that travel across state lines. So that's a lot, right? All of those things are happening. Additionally, EPA has announced that they're going to take on two rules that are sort of the foundation of what runs under all of these other rules. One thing they said they're going to reconsider the agency's social cost of carbon measurement. The Biden administration, this is a piece of math that goes into the risk assessments or the cost benefit analysis of all rules when they come out. The Biden administration had increased that social cost of carbon by 10, a factor of 10, which made all kinds of regulations look more cost benefity, if you will. So I think you're going to see them roll that back. But they've also said that they are going to look at reconsidering the agency's greenhouse gas endangerment finding. And this was the finding that dates back to 2006 that makes carbon regulations even possible. Because the Clean Air Act didn't call out carbon as a pollutant when it was originally passed. So the endangerment finding in 2006 defined carbon as a pollutant that therefore the government could regulate. EPA has said they're now looking to try to roll that back or eliminate it possibly. No details as to when or how. It'll certainly be litigated. But that's a very big deal that would underpin every regulation that has everything to do with carbon. So a couple of things to think about when you do this. Number one is how are they going to get all that done? I mean, that is an ambitious deregulatory agenda, and they're talking about pursuing this at the same time. They're talking about reducing, a major reduction in force at EPA, and cutting the EPA budget by 65% or more. So that's kind of a conundrum. We got a lot of stuff we want to get done, but we're going to get rid of a bunch of people who would be presumably the ones that we would have doing it. So that's an interesting factor, and to some degree, some of these initiatives are going to be fighting for bandwidth at the agency. So which ones get really prioritized? But there's another thing to keep in mind, and I will include a clip, a link to this in the on track for you tomorrow. E&E News called it out. Just the fact that EPA is undertaking these rules will help accomplish some of their objectives. So, we've talked before on a couple of these calls when we go deep on regulations about how the Biden administration arguably pursued a regulatory strategy that some described as win by losing. An example, the 2008 mercury and air toxics rules, the first one that came out, was First one that came out was eventually struck down by the courts, but it took 8 years to get through the courts. By that time, a whole bunch of coal power plants had shut down, and a former EPA administrator was notoriously caught on a hot mic saying, "We win by losing." You know, a lot of the very extreme rules that have come out last administration may have fit in that category, that by the time they all got litigated, they may not all stand. But by that time, you know, the damage to the coal fleet will have been done. You know, I think part of what EPA is doing now is playing that same strategy back in reverse and on steroids. So just the fact that all these rules are being opened up for reconsideration, you know, that's going to change the litigation standpoint. It's going to change the litigation landscape. It's going to slow compliance deadlines. It's going to have a major effect. And we're already seeing, in response to this change in the regulatory environment and in response to the energy demands for AI and all these other things, the grid reliability concerns coming from the grid people, we're already seeing a lot of coal plants that had retirement dates scheduled, having those dates canceled or prolonged. So is it a coal renaissance? Probably not. Nobody's building new plants yet. There's a state legislator in Wyoming who's announced that they want to build a new coal plant there. But you know, nobody's financed or broken ground on new plants now. But it's pretty clear that the older plants are going to probably run longer than we thought they would. And so, and then just one last thing before we break up. I've kept you. We're coming up on an hour here shortly. But President Trump earlier this week, well, 2 days ago, President Trump posted this on Truth Social. After years of being held captive by environmental extremists, lunatics, radicals, and thugs, allowing other countries, in particular China, to gain tremendous economic advantage over us by opening up hundreds of coal-fired power plants, I am authorizing my administration to immediately begin producing energy with, in all capital letters, beautiful, clean coal. So if you haven't already seen it show up in your news feed, get ready for beautiful, clean coal to start showing up more frequently. There were no specifics attached to that Truth Social post. It's triggered a lot of speculation as to what may be coming next from the administration in terms of ways to promote the coal fleet. But I think it's safe to say that there's more shoes to drop. And we've got a couple of clips coming out in the On Track tomorrow as well that pertain to President Trump's beautiful clean coal announcement this week and some speculation as to what that might lead to. So again, welcome to day 59 of Trump 2.0. For those of us who read news for a living, it feels like it's been a year, but things are moving at a rapid pace, and we will have lots of discussions around where these things are going in San Antonio. So one last final bit of shameless self-promotion. Register early, get in on the Rail Shipper 101, register for the Springer O&M conference, and we'll look forward to going deep on some of these issues when we're in San Antonio. With that, any other questions, comments from the group? Feel free to unmask or send something into the chat. Not seeing any. We do record all these sessions. They are available online on the members only section of the NCTA website, or Melinda can provide you a link. So if you're ever not able to attend one of these and would like to, please do so. Our guest next month in April will be Ben Kerr from the Association of American Railroads. Ben works in the economics department at AAR and has done some really in-depth, detailed work around coal and where the coal fleet is going. So we will be back next month, same bat time, same bat channel, with Ben to talk about AAR's view on where the coal fleet and the coal industry is going. So Melinda, anything else we need to chat about before we let them go? Melinda's giving me the universal not from me.
Nope, I think you covered it well. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for being here today. Let your friends and neighbors know they can review it on a recording if they like. Watch the On Track tomorrow for more details, and don't forget to register for San Antonio. Thanks, everybody, for joining.
Thank you.